They don't block you, they don't confront you, they just vanish one by one. And you're left wondering what invisible force pushed them away. What if I told you it wasn't them? It was something in you they couldn't handle. Welcome back to the channel. If you're new here, hit that subscribe button because today we're diving into the darkest corner of human behavior, a place where Machiavellian psychology meets uncomfortable truth. Here's the thing nobody wants to admit. Some people are too powerful for their own social good. Not physically powerful, not even obviously intimidating, but psychologically. They operate on a frequency most people can't sustain, and it scares people away. You've probably noticed it. Friends who used to text daily now leave you on read. Colleagues who avoid making eye contact. Family members who suddenly have excuses for every gathering. The slow fade, the ghosting without the ghost. And here's where it gets interesting. The traits that cause this aren't weaknesses. They're often strengths, dangerous strengths. The kind that make people deeply uncomfortable because they hold up a mirror to everyone else's mediocrity, their lies, their carefully constructed illusions. Today, we're breaking down 6 uncommon traits rooted in dark psychology that make people slowly drift away from you. And by the end of this video, you'll understand why being alone might not be your failure, but your evolution. Trait 1, you see through social performance. Let's start with the most unsettling one. You have what psychologists call high Machiavellian perception. You don't just hear what people say, you decode what they mean. You notice the micro-expressions, the strategic pauses, the performative kindness that's really just reputation management. Most people live in a theater where everyone agrees to pretend the performance is real. You're the person in the audience who sees the strings, the stage crew, the actors checking their phones between scenes, and you can't unsee it. Here's the dark psychology behind it. Humans are tribal animals who rely on social cohesion for survival. That cohesion is built on mutually agreed upon fictions. I'm fine. I love my job. Our friendship means everything to me. These are the scripts that keep society running smoothly. When you consistently see through these performances, you become a threat. Not because you're cruel or judgmental, but because your presence makes others hyper-aware that they're performing. They feel exposed, naked, and nobody wants to feel that way, especially not around someone who's effortlessly authentic while they're struggling to maintain the facade. The Machiavellian element here isn't that you're manipulating anyone. It's that you understand manipulation so deeply that you've become immune to it. You've studied the game so thoroughly that you no longer need to play. And that makes you dangerous to those still playing. People drift away because being around you requires them to drop their masks, and most people would rather lose you than face themselves. Trait 2, you refuse to participate in collective delusions. Trait number 2 is even more isolating. You don't engage in what sociologists call pluralistic ignorance. That's when everyone in a group privately doubts something but publicly supports it because they think everyone else believes it. Think about it. The toxic workplace where everyone pretends the boss is visionary. The friend group where everyone acts like Sarah's new boyfriend is great even though he's clearly a narcissist. The family that insists everything is perfect when 3 people aren't speaking to each other. You're the one who won't nod along. Not because you're trying to be difficult, but because you psychologically cannot endorse a lie. It's like asking you to agree that the sky is green. Your brain won't do it. Here's where the dark psychology gets fascinating. Collective delusions are the glue of human relationships. They're how groups maintain harmony. When everyone agrees to believe the same comforting lie, it creates a shared reality that bonds people together. Your refusal to participate isn't seen as honesty. It's seen as betrayal. You're breaking the social contract. You're the child pointing out that the emperor has no clothes, and everyone hates that child because now they can't unsee it either. From a Machiavellian perspective, you're committing social suicide. Machiavelli himself wrote that appearing virtuous is more important than being virtuous. You're doing the opposite. You're prioritizing internal consistency over external approval. And in the game of social politics, that's a losing strategy. But here's the twist. You're not losing. You're just playing a different game. One where your opponent is not other people, but your own capacity for self-deception. And you're winning. People drift away because you remind them that they're losing their game. The one where they pretend to believe things they don't. And that's unbearable. Trait 3. You have emotional self-sufficiency. Trait number 3 sounds like a strength, and it is. But it's also deeply threatening. You don't need people the way most people need people, not in an edgy, antisocial way. You're perfectly capable of connection. You enjoy it even. But you don't require constant emotional validation. You don't need someone to text good morning to feel loved. And you don't collapse into anxiety when you're alone on a Friday night. Psychologists call this secure attachment combined with low affiliation need. In dark psychology terms, you're the person who can't be controlled through emotional leverage. And that is terrifying to most people. Here's why. The foundation of most relationships is mutual neediness. I need you to validate me, you need me to validate you, and we both participate in this exchange. It's transactional even when it doesn't feel that way. You're disrupting the transaction, you're giving without needing to take. Or worse, you're not giving at all because you don't need the exchange. From a Machiavellian standpoint, this makes you unpredictable. In The Prince, Machiavelli emphasizes that people are controlled through fear and love, through what they need and what they dread losing. You don't fit the form. You can't be bought with affection or threatened with abandonment because you've already made peace with solitude. People drift away because they realize they have no leverage over you. They can't make you chase them. They can't punish you with distance. They can't extract ego-boosting reactions. You're a vending machine that doesn't need coins, and that makes the relationship feel pointless to those who only understand connection as exchange. The loneliest part? You're not even trying to be this way. It's just who you are. And people resent you for the freedom they can't access themselves. Trait 4. You ask questions that expose cognitive dissonance. Let's get into the most socially lethal trait. You ask the questions nobody else will ask. Not in an aggressive way, often very gently. But your questions have a surgical precision that exposes the contradictions in people's belief systems. If you hate your job, why are you still there? You say family is everything, but you haven't visited your parents in 3 months. What's really going on? You preach mental health awareness but judge people who take medication. How do you reconcile that? These aren't attacks, they're genuine curiosities, but they function like psychological landmines. Here's the dark psychology. Every human being operates with cognitive dissonance. We hold contradictory beliefs because consistency is hard and honesty is painful. We say we value one thing and do another. We judge others for what we secretly do ourselves. We build elaborate rationalizations for our hypocrisies. Most people have an unspoken agreement not to point this out in each other. It's mutually assured destruction. You don't mention my contradictions, I won't mention yours. You didn't get the memo. Your questions force people into a corner where they have to either admit their hypocrisy or double down on their delusions. Either option makes them uncomfortable. So instead of engaging, they disengage from you. Machiavelli understood this principle deeply. He knew that people hate being reminded of their own inconsistencies more than they hate being directly insulted. Your questions aren't insults, but they're worse. They're invitations to self-awareness. And most people would rather ghostly drift away than accept that invitation. The cruelest irony, you ask these questions because you care. You believe in people's capacity to grow, but they interpret it as judgment, as an attack, as evidence that you think you're better than them. And maybe in the brutal honesty of dark psychology, they're right to feel that way. Not because you think you're superior, but because you've done the painful work of confronting your own contradictions. And they haven't. Trait 5. You have a high tolerance for conflict. Trait number 5 is where most people tap out. You don't fear confrontation, not because you enjoy it, not because you're aggressive, but because you understand that conflict is data. It reveals truth. It tests the strength of relationships. And you'd rather have an uncomfortable truth than a comfortable lie. Most people treat conflict like emotional poison. They'll do anything to avoid it. Lie, deflect, people please, go silent, pretend nothing happened. They've been conditioned to believe that harmony is more valuable than honesty. You've come to the opposite conclusion. You believe that real connection can only exist beyond the conflict, not by avoiding it. Here's the dark psychology angle. Your tolerance for conflict reads as aggression to people with low conflict tolerance. Even when you're being calm and rational, they experience your willingness to engage as an attack. Their nervous systems are wired to perceive any disruption of peace as danger. From a Machiavellian perspective, most people control relationships through conflict avoidance. They train others to tiptoe around sensitive topics by becoming emotionally volatile when those topics arise. It's a manipulation tactic, often unconscious but effective. You can't be trained this way. You'll walk directly into the fire if that's where the truth lives, and this makes you uncontrollable. People drift away because they realize they can't manage you through emotional volatility. They can't shut you down by crying or yelling or giving you the silent treatment. You'll wait out the storm and return to the conversation. You're relentless in your pursuit of resolution. And that's exhausting to people who use conflict avoidance as a control mechanism. The dark truth they won't tell you. They're not leaving because you're too harsh. They're leaving because you're too honest. And honesty, real honesty, is the most brutal weapon in human relationships. Trait 6. You've integrated your shadow self, and now we arrive at the final trait, the one that ties everything together. You've done what Carl Jung called shadow work. You've looked at the darkest parts of yourself, the jealousy, the rage, the pettiness, the capacity for cruelty, and instead of repressing them, you've integrated them. You know what you're capable of. You've made peace with your darkness. And paradoxically, this makes you less dangerous than people who haven't done this work because you're not at the mercy of unconscious impulses. But here's what makes people uncomfortable. When you've integrated your shadow, you can see everyone else's shadow too. You recognize the manipulation because you understand the impulse to manipulate. You spot the narcissism because you've confronted your own ego. You see the cowardice because you know where yours lives. This is peak dark psychology. You're not a sociopath lacking empathy. You're the opposite. You have such profound self-awareness that you've become a mirror for everyone else's unconscious. And people hate looking in that mirror. Machiavelli wrote about the importance of appearing virtuous while being willing to act ruthlessly when necessary. You've gone a step further. You've transcended the appearance. You're neither purely virtuous nor purely ruthless. You're integrated, whole. And that wholeness makes you incomprehensible to people still at war with themselves. People drift away because being around you requires them to acknowledge their own shadows. And most people have spent their entire lives running from that acknowledgement. You're not better than them, you've just stopped running, and they can't forgive you for it. So here's the punchline, the twist you didn't see coming, everything I just described. These 6 traits that make people drift away, they're not problems to fix. They're the price of admission to a different kind of life. You're not broken, you're not too much, you're not cursed to be alone, you're just operating at a frequency that most people can't sustain. And instead of dimming yourself to keep people comfortable, you chose to burn bright and alone. But here's the real dark psychology secret. You're not actually alone. You're surrounded by people who can't handle your light. And that's not the same as being unwanted by people who can. Somewhere out there are others like you, playing the same game, speaking the same language, walking through the same fire. And when you meet them, you'll realize something profound. You didn't drive people away. You filtered them out. The people who drifted, they were never your people. You're not losing relationships. You're making space for the right ones, and that's not loneliness. That's ruthless self-preservation. The question is, are you brave enough to keep burning?